Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Thriller Podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk this one because in the Patreon group chat, we've had some bold claims that this early in 2026, we might already have a candidate for Book of the Year.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And Mark's other hot take, we might have the single best action scene in the whole entire year. Cold Zero by Brad Thor and Ward Larsen is just a massive success. And I was so glad to talk with them a few weeks ago about it. And I'm really glad to talk with you tonight and get to the scorecard. Big things are coming.
Big things. And one thing I can say about this book, the plot is not to get a guy, to get a guy, to get a guy, for sure.
It is not. It definitely is not.
No,
to get a sub, to get a plane, to get a sub, to get an icebreaker.
I feel like a lot of books are like that, but it depends on. I just want to clarify that comment that we made. Let's strike it from the books.
Sure.
It's there. We've read plenty of books that have that formula and succeed. It's how you fill in the get a guy to get a guy to get a guy that make it. So that's all I want to say. Anyways, moving on. This book,
a little backstory for people who haven't heard it. We got to interview Brad Thor, and live on the pod, a 20-something New York Times bestselling author, one of our heroes, one of our top authors of all time, cursed us out live on the pod. Check the interview for more. A friendly cussing out because we are in his head, living rent free when he writes, because of our critique that we don't like books where you get a guy to get a guy. And I thought about it more as well. And I do have to say, I think the books that I like less have too many villains that are inconsequential. So the get a guy to get a guy is like this network of villains who just pop up like Austin Powers henchmen, who get tossed aside, but they only did one thing to move the plot forward and didn't have any other role besides that. So I'm going to stand by. I think I'm liking books less that do that. So crazy to think we're influencing a New York Times bestseller.
No, and I think if to bring it back to Cold Zero, obviously you have to have progression. Every story needs to have progression, and you're introducing new characters, you're introducing new plot points, you're introducing new plot holes, twists, turns, obviously, and it's in the execution of that. And I think with this book, there's plenty of those twists and turns, and hell, like we even mentioned it briefly, like the spoiler alert. Obviously we're spoiling this book, but we mentioned it briefly in our spoiler section with Brad, like the fact that he chose to blow up the plane right when it lands, like that's just a boom, crazy.
Wow.
And then the other thing that I think this book does great is it has this, like Brad said, it has this crazy MacGuffin, right? That potentially could be used at every single turn, but they only use it once, and it uses it to great success, and it gets put back in its box, and it's never touched again. And I like that about the story. Yep. Very much so.
And I don't think that's forced because the battery life, like I realistically bought a prototype is not going to have cutting edge battery life that can survive the Arctic forever. Like they have to be very careful to shut this thing down, turn it on, turn it off. So yeah, I bought into everything about how Skyfire was used. I almost wanted to see it a little bit more, but the few times it is used have such a big payoff that it's absolutely fine for me. And like you said, maybe as the discussion unfolds, villains are not the best part of this book, but what I really do like, and that prevents it from being get a guy to get a guy, the Russian commander of the sub plays a really important role, and I like being inside his head, trying to think like how is he wargaming it out of what his next move is, particularly with the icebreaker scene. So between the LC-130 being blown up upon landing on the ice, it successfully lands, but then we have this whole shootout scene. Well, I think the other most dramatic scene that maybe I liked more was the Chinese icebreaker sinking the sub, because when we get the Russian and he has to like take the Chinese crew captive, I just thought that was insane. So even if villains aren't like top of the top memorable, they're put in situations where I really enjoy them, and their decisions are very consequential. So get a guy to get a guy would be one just leads to the next, picks off the next, gets new intel from the next. No, I think being in the Russian commander's head, making decisions about what to do with this Chinese crew who just sank his nuclear-powered classified sub, that's a very consequential decision. Same thing with the Chinese. I don't know exactly what his level is in the Ministry of Intelligence, but
He
his
seems like one
psychosis.
step down from, I guess he's like the equivalent of director of operations that we see at the CIA, who's like liaising. That's what I was kind of piecing him together to be.
He's at that level, but
Kind of
not
that
the
level.
highest
Not
echelon
the
where he's
highest, but
protected.
yeah.
So I like the fact that he's vulnerable. He's got his own psychotic episodes going on, and he's worrying about, is he going to be put in front of the firing squad?
Exactly.
So I think the stakes for each of those, you can call them mini villains. I don't think any one of them is the overarching villain of the whole thing. Maybe that Chinese guy, but they each play a role. They each have their own motivations, their own worries, and their own decision making that puts them front and center. And all that comes together to make an excellent plot. And nothing, I feel like, is superfluous or inconsequential to what Chen and Casey Sheridan. Yeah, that Dr. Chen, Casey Sheridan, and Brett Sharp is kind of pulled into the whole thing by happenstance. He rises to the occasion. So I just think every character is tastefully done, plays a role start to finish, and has decisions that really carry weight and affect the rest of the plot. And to me, that's fantastically done.
And to me, almost like the villain, sure, you have this, MSS officer who's pulling the shows. You have this incompetent, like, nepo baby who was placed on the icebreaker. You have the Russians who are sort of left out of the loop trying to figure it all out. But to me, the real villain in all this is the idea of Skyfire and it being in the wrong person's hands. Like one can make an argument whether or not it needs to be in our hands, but like just this idea, and then I think what adds this propulsive element to it is, one, you get to see it in action, so you fully understand what it's capable. We saw it right in action at the very beginning. That scene is crazy, especially because I drive a Tesla, and my wife is like convinced that someone could hack my car, but we get a brief snippet of it there, and then to get the full-fledged awesome scene of this icebreaker destroying we also see I guess it's a variant of it, right, by taking down the actual commercial airplane. It's not Skyfire itself, but it's like some like prototype that his Chen's protege was making, and like that is the villain, like the threat of it's not a nuke on the loose, but it is this all powerful AI intelligent thing that, given to the wrong people, can lead to catastrophe.
Which kicks off the race. I think that's such a cool mechanism to make it this global Arctic race to capture this device. I don't know how to classify this book because it's a race against the clock. It's a race against the elements. There's another villain we can add, is the Arctic conditions and the polar bear.
Polar bear.
It becomes a survival book. And at the end, like I said, a special ops rescue mission breaks out, a fighter jet dropping bombs, a submarine surfacing, a CIA spy trying to extricate an asset who's turning. It just crosses genre in a way that could be a complete disaster if you don't have a solid foundation behind it. And for me, Skyfire was enough of that. I could see someone feeling that Skyfire needed a little more explanation. I think a little more, tech specs and how does it work inside the AI world. And I think that could have been welcome. I don't want to get away from the main storyline, but I think
I think Chen
a deeper
did a
dive.
decent job explaining, because kind of we got that little bit of an explanation when Casey's like, "What did you do?"
Well, yeah, what did you build?
No, because he's like, "Did you know when you unleashed it that it was going to do that?" And he said, "No, it's built to then look at the weaknesses and then exploit those weaknesses to the fullest, and so in that moment its weakness was, all right, we're gonna ram this up to take not one but two elements out of the game that it deems a threat."
No,
It's
fair.
very
And that
similar
was cool.
to
Andrews and Wilson, the drones. That's what I think of.
reminded me of this last Mission Impossible movie, Rogue. not Rogue Nation, but Dead Reckoning, because they're looking for the entity and that kind of stuff. But kind of getting back to your point of left in the wrong hands, I think that's why this story in particular, being co-written by Ward and Brad, like it's kind of like the best of both of their wheelhouses in a sense. And we could talk to them a little bit about this, about how, you have that whole special ops, mission trying to get somebody out, which we've seen in a bunch of different Harvath novels, or race against the elements, obviously that kind of stuff. And then you bring in this aviation, this tech, you know, what's going on around that, and you kind of blend together like what they can both bring to the story. And I felt like this story is, yeah, sure, the idea was created by Brad, but it was fully fleshed out, and I think it couldn't have been fleshed out better with a different, like if Brad had picked another, or whoever else he had decided, if Word had said no, I think this turned out the best it could.
I agree. I think either one of them could have written the story solo, come up with something similar. I think the fact that they were able to do it together and push each other, bring those different backgrounds, I think that's what pushes this book over the edge and makes it top tier. So, and I was also equally satisfied and happy to hear about their process really clicking, because, I've raised questions and concerns before of what is this co-authoring move and why are so many people moving forward with it? Curious, skeptical, worried that it might not have the best of intentions. But those two just really, really showed, I think, a path that I'd be happy with, is that, yes, one person might have the idea. Yes, there's maybe a power imbalance of one person's a bigger bestseller, more well-known household name. One isn't, but it's not like, it was sell one person's name and make the other one do all the grunt work. They really, and they came alive, were excited to talk about their process and sending things back and forth and working through, leaving comments and track notes on the document. Like, I was really satisfied to hear that that's how the process went, as opposed to, hey, I just handed this thing off, they wrote it, and then I marked it up with red pen and gave it back. It was really good to hear that they were truly tag teaming. It seems like just a natural partnership. And I mean, that's got to be tough from an established author, set in their ways, has their process down pat, just needs the time to work solo. It's most of their career in terms of writing and putting words on a page has been that. And to break that after however many books he wrote, I'm sure that's a tough thing. And they really just reassured me that this is a great model moving forward. So we're going to see Jack Carr having one come out in a few months. Other authors, I think, are already starting to make plans to do something similar. So I think these two just showed us the path, and it worked out.
If it's a means by which the publisher wants to have more books by the author, by it means that the author themselves feels like they could put out more, but they don't have the bandwidth, whatever the case may be, if this is going to be the model of like how it's done and how it's executed, then sure, sign me up. If that means we're going to get one of these, every year, every other year type thing. Obviously, at the end of the story, they left this. I want to talk a little bit about Sharp, because while he comes out the gate pretty hot, I feel like he's sidelined for a decent amount of the story, and then comes in strong at the end. But I feel like they have something here in terms of this dynamic duo. If he truly is, incorporated into the CIA, and obviously there's going to be fallout for it. You could continue on with the Skyfire stuff and like the fallout with the Chinese and everything. So super intrigued about that. But if they don't touch it again, then I'm excited to see something else by the two of them. So
same, yeah. I was glad they have plans, and whether those plans include Casey and Sharp, great. If it includes the fallout, like you said, in the Arctic, sure. It doesn't matter to me. I love the characters enough to go on another adventure with them, regardless of where they're at. So to see him brought into the fold, uh, I think that could be a really good way to go. Whether they do it or not could be great. Now, what about the Netflix talk? I don't know how I feel still about not getting Scot Harvath on screen with all this big announcement. But at the same time, this book is so cinematic. To see a couple of these scenes, to see the icebreaker being taken over by AI, crashing the sub, and then bombing the ice. It would work so well. So I was really glad to hear that. But come on, I want some Scot Harvath. I want Lions of Lucerne.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I guess as lifelong fans of Brad and Scott to for this to be the first thing to option, I'm a little sad, but I will say this: they have a point. Like, and it's like
Right.
it's understood why someone would want to option this so quickly
Yep.
and gobbling it up
To
because
jump on it.
this leads to perfect execution on screen. Like we say
Yep.
that some of the best thriller authors are the ones that are able to get you to visualize every scene in your mind. Like there was no way you couldn't do that with this novel.
Yep. I felt it. I felt transported there, which is the strangest thing to say because it's one of the most foreign, hostile,
Yeah.
isolated environments in the world that would ever have zero experience with. But yet I felt so connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, we talked about the big scenes, we talked about the characters. What about a few of these scenes that I think are like B tier? They're not up there with the top two we mentioned, but like the crash itself is awesome. And then similarly, the backlash story, the basically humping through the ice, the cracks, bringing the ladder, Dr. Chen basically nearly dying on this journey. What did you think about those two parts? Because to me, they're like the next step. The top two scenes were so good. Those are like the next tier of really good scenes.
So you're saying the top two are the
Icebreaker.
icebreaker, and then the very end scene.
Yep. Everything from the plane landing on the ice, getting shot out, to the bombers busting the ice and the
So the
U.S.
Cheyenne could
sub-surfing.
come
Yeah,
out.
the Cheyenne
Yeah.
surfacing.
No, like I think it's, I think who was it? Anyways, one of our patrons like mentioned that, while there wasn't like too much action, I think the action we got was good, and I could see that, like, there's not a run and gun and shoot scene like every couple chapters, just because of the nature of like what the story is. I think it was intriguing enough to get those moments of right after the crash. You have, all right, we need to set up and figure out survival mode and do all this stuff at the same time. Casey still hasn't divulged this information. Where the hell is Skyfire? Is Chen even alive? Like that kind of stuff. So there's all this suspense, intrigue built into that. And then after everything kicks off and she leaves and is on the run, obviously
Exactly.
you throw in like a polar bear, you throw in the elements. Chen is half alive. There's these ice chasms that I'm just like 6 feet. You can't just jump that, but I guess like I don't know. It's pretty far. I've never been in that situation, so
No, me neither. But it was described so well. These ice flows and every little crack and crevice. It just made sense. So yeah, I think I would agree with the action is not evenly distributed throughout, but again, it need not be. And then that's why our category is action and suspense. I think once you throw suspense into that category, I mean, I was on suspense every time they had to fire off a message with Skyfire and what the response will be. Edge of my seat when they took off on the journey and we knew the polar bear was lurking. Like, I just thought all of that was a whole lot of fun. And then one crazy one right after the crash when they're trying to set up camp. They're trying to take like inventory of who they have and what they have aboard. They even blow up the raft to block off the fuselage where it's cut in half. I just think so much of that, it's not a traditional. Maybe people are looking for more shoot 'em up, pew pew, assassin type storyline.
I think you get enough of that at the end.
You get a little taste of it, but I didn't want that throughout. It's just it's a crash in the Arctic. We're not going to randomly have assassins showing up out of nowhere, or like somebody who just all of a sudden is like, I know how to shoot, okay, whatever. It wasn't a shoot 'em up book, and it still had my attention throughout. So for action, suspense is probably not my biggest ding of the book, but it's a point or two down. Like if we're going to get into it, it's an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's fully an 8 out of 10. But like, even to the point of right before, excuse me, right before the icebreaker rams into the, we have the whole suspense of like the Russians found them because she
Yep.
shot the polar bear. Like, what are they going to do? They have to figure out like they have to come up with some sort of ruse,
Delay tactics. Yep.
delay tactics. And
Yep.
then the Chinese arrive, and then what's his name has the foresight to pull that gangway and like let it sink so that way they
Yep.
can't get it when they're coming back. There's just every little thing, and of course, like they're in most remote place on Earth. And the fact that all right, it's already a coincidence enough that you have an icebreaker. Well, I guess that was sent there to find them. Two, you have this Russian shub that was happened to be tracking the Cheyenne, and the Cheyenne was sent there too. So, obviously all these things are converging into one. There's not going to be any other like elements other than, what like we have at the end, the ice wolves that have to take 8 hours to get to them,
Yep.
because of how far they are away.
Yep.
And you have this race to this finish of like, oh my God, the F-15s are, the bomber's going to get there like 10 minutes before like the second wave of planes come in. And, you have this, first of all, you have the 4 Navy SEAL, or no, it's 2 Navy SEAls with 2, Finnish,
the Swedes, Finns. Yeah. Finns. Yeah.
counterparts.
That was cool.
And they were able to take down all the ice wolves. That scene was
Sick.
amazing.
So sick. And it was just such a classic thriller scene and executed
That
so
was
perfectly.
very, very, very Brad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, completely. Some of what you just touched on there goes to plot. And I would say I'm going to combine it with buy-in just a little. There was never a time in the book where I wanted to stop and just poke holes in the plot. And sometimes books make me do that. The eye roll moment, this person's motivations make no sense. Why are we doing this thing with said thing? I don't think this book, even though it breathed, it had times to kind of slow down a little. It never made me question where it was going. So for me, plot was kind of tight. It was a 9 out of 10, I think. That could be generous. I could go 8 on this as well, but for some reason I have to wrap it up with buy-in. There was nothing in the plot, which I rolled my eyes. I said, I don't buy it. You didn't sell me on it. I think they sold me on everything, start to finish.
Yeah, and I think that's why the hallmark of this book and why it's a front runner for our book of the year, just because of once you put aside this whole idea of that Skyfire can even exist, like you have to accept that very first. You have to buy into that.
You do. Yeah.
But then once you're into that, then everything is game, right? And I feel like they did enough, obviously, with the initial scene of the taxi getting taken
the car
over.
chase, yeah.
And then establishing, all right, they're able to take out the plane, and they're able to use it like that all along. We're getting more hints and hints of like how powerful this can be, and then like it kind of like clicks. I think for me, this is a 9. It's the only thing I would like maybe budge on if I like was pushed is when we are in they have to trek a pretty decent clip to get to this like weather station, and at one point Chen falls into the ice. Like,
I think
wouldn't
you're dead.
I think earlier they had mentioned like if you soon as you fall in the ice, like then you come out like
I think you're dead.
You're done.
Yeah. I don't know if they would have made it.
Yeah, like that is, but again, we're at that point in the book that I'm already hook, line, and sinker. You have me. It's a race towards the finish. I want to see them get out, so I'm going to believe anything. You know what I mean?
If it was
If
right
that's early
after
on
the
in the book,
crash, exactly.
yeah.
If it was right after the crash and like one of them is injured so bad and bleeding out, and all of a sudden they're just fine to go on this journey and they fall in the freezing water, it wouldn't have worked for me. But I was so captivated by the tension of the moment that I was fine with it. I realistically, I mean, I could say the same thing about Backlash, though. Realistically, there were so many times Harvath ain't going to survive that shit. But again, he's Harvath. This is Dr. Chen. We are not sold on that. He's some Arctic trained warrior, Olympic ski team, Navy SEAL guy. So it could be a little, okay, because of little things like that, maybe I'm only going 4.5 on buy-in. I was going to say a perfect 5, but there are some little things you could pick apart, but you don't need to nitpick this book. You just need to read and enjoy the hell out of it.
Yeah.
So
All right,
4 or
so
5 I'm buying.
we're both 4 or 5 on buyout.
Okay.
Okay. I have the scorecard in going for you in our notes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of just jumped us right into it.
Yeah. All right, bad guys.
A 3 is harsh. If it was solely the Chinese MSS guy, who's okay, not great, villain, but not big bad, I might go down to a 3. The Russian for me, and the Arctic and the polar bear, I think all that brings me up to a 4.
Okay.
Could be high. Could be high. Yeah, it could be generous.
One thing I do, obviously this doesn't like add to the bad guy numbers, but one thing I did like about the bad guy is super quirky. Like this idea of this guy, careerist. He has some crazy ass illnesses that, he's keeping secret, so that's why you could tell that he's just unhinged. Like, I mean, he's unhinged enough that he, first of all, took down the airplane in the first place. And then at the very end, he'll do anything. Like he even says, he gets caught saying like, I can only go to America, and then gets found out to be a traitor and gets taken away. So I liked the story. It was like a different take on, someone who has everything to lose and does lose it, All right, you're giving it a 4, I'm giving it a 3.5.
Yeah, I think 3.5 is, could be. Yeah. The reason I was generous, and I'm still thinking about that, I don't know his name, the commander of the Russian sub, and something about the standoff where he has to direct his guys to take the Chinese prisoner. I'm like, you got Russian dudes taking Chinese dudes as prisoners of war. You sunk this guy's ship.
He does like have them like hide their guns underneath like something, and then like he pops them out,
and then they take them out. Yep,
because they happened to have one guy who spoke Mandarin like on their team.
I just think it's something about that scene brings me up on the bad guys, because another thing is we had these villains, this collision. We were set for this collision course over Skyfire. I thought it would be like who physically gets Skyfire and like takes it from the other person and a struggle over that. But instead it was this other way of the Chinese and the Russians butting head that were really unique, so that Skyfire can escape, or that they can escape with Skyfire. Something about that scene of when that happened and they had to make decisions of who's going to hold who accountable on the ice in the moment with the ship going down. I thought he rose to the occasion as a villain. So let me keep the 4, even though I know that's a little generous.
But he does lose his sub.
He lost the ship. Don't give up the ship. He gave up the ship. It's a Chinese icebreaker that fucking ran the thing. So an AI guided Chinese icebreaker. I don't think it's his fault.
All right, what do you think about the good guys? We have 2 main characters, I would say. Well, I probably like a 1A and a 1B. Would you agree with that? That Sheridan is the 1A and Sharp is our 1B?
Yeah. I just think they go together. I'm trying to think, of another category instead of yeah. I think they complement each other very well. The other thing is, here's what it is. They're 1A and 1B at different times depending on the moment. I think Sharp becomes 1A at a point where it's about survival. He's the captain, he's the pilot. He's got to command the ship and the crew. So I like how he's 1A for a little while, and Sheridan knows it's her time to be 1B. And then when it is the rescue mission and she's been trained, she's been involved, she takes the lead. I really like how the two complement each other back and forth. So,
and I also like the fact that they were both kind of grounded in realism, in the sense that like when we do get to that shootout fight, all right, Casey is using her, what was that, bolt action Remington that she had to take out some people, but it wasn't like, we were cutting to Sharp and he was given a gun and he was, taking out like just 20 of these ice wolves. Like he was injured, so he was kind of like out of the fight a little bit. But they didn't make it unbelievable in the sense that these people were superheroes, right? I felt that Sheridan, obviously we don't know all about her, but her bona fides are established early. And I think she has a little bit more, there's a little bit more behind her than we first initially see.
Sure.
And yeah, I like that you said it. Like they're both 1A, 1B, but they sort of fluctuate between who is going to be 1A, 1B. And I feel like it sets it up for this nice pairing if they do decide to continue with them going forward.
Yeah. Very different people, very different backgrounds. But at the same time, they both are speaking the same language, the language of leadership, survival instincts, team before self. So I think so crazy to see that they're so in the know with each other. They were communicating even in these high stress situations and being understanding of where the other one's at and why the other one hid something from them. They didn't get petty and egotistic about it. So for them alone, I want to give a 5 out of 5, but I think here's my half point. What about the other people on this plane? What are they doing? Why are they pitching in? They're just sitting there mooching off everyone else. I mean, in the beginning of the story, we get a little bit of background of them. I thought it was going to be, like Falling or Drowning.
Sure.
The T.J. Newman books. It's all about the group and the least among us, the quiet one in the corner, the one who looked like they didn't bring anything to the table, had their moment to shine, to rise to the occasion. They offered some piece of the puzzle that saved everybody's bacon. I thought we can just use a little more out of those guys. I completely forgot who else was on the plane, completely forgot about the other survivors. I have no idea what they're doing. So some way of incorporating them is my half a point.
The other thing was kind of crazy is that as the remaining, first officer, he's like now accountable for all those lives. He just decides, I mean, I guess he does like contemplate it, and we're inside of his head, and he says he's going to make a crazy decision to do what he does. But isn't that kind of crazy that he does just decide to ditch him?
It is.
I guess he needed to make sure that Casey survived.
Yeah, and it's after, he knew the consequences of it. We see him making that decision. The Russians are already there.
He knows the Russians are there, so
exactly.
It's not like he's leaving them alone.
Yeah, and he's not leaving them with a hostile enemy. It's like the Russians are literally there to rescue them. So, yeah, I'm okay with that part, but...
Yeah, it was kind of like... Because he does a little bit of work to establish these, like this Nick guy, there's graduate students, there's this Chinese couple, like we get a little bit of it, and then we're just, they're kind of like
they're not brought in. Yeah. 4.5 then, or is that a 4? I feel like a point's too big for that ding.
I think 4.5. The Sheridan and
Sharp and Sheridan
are
completely
too good. So
they're too good. Exactly. They're 5 out of 5, the two of them.
Setting.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's a perfect 5.
It's perfect.
Is it weird to say at times I felt cold reading this book?
Like, no, I completely did. And it was right during Snow Crete, so ice storm.
Yeah, and I feel like this is Brad's element. Like, just maybe me coming in with that prior knowledge of all he's done, in his past couple books. I guess not recently, but like in the past, he's been there. We've been in the Arctic, we've been in Norway, we've been in Russia, like. So I'm just used to him. That's very much his element, and he does a great job of conveying that. And then, I feel like just putting us in different spaces, in the submarine, in the airplane, they both did a great job with that. So yeah, perfect.
I think a lot of that is Ward. I mean, especially the plane part in the beginning, but you didn't read Dark Vector, did you? Because I think I did the interview with Ward about that one. I forget if you were on it.
Was that the one with submarines?
No, but it's a plane, a high-tech piece of equipment that there's a dissident escaping, but they go down in Russia. And it was crazy. There was a whole rescue mission, sliding, going across the ice, going into these little villages next to the lake, a survival story of True Miller having to hide out on this downed plane and use it for survival, using every last scrap of the plane to know exactly what he has and what he doesn't have to survive the elements. Whereas a lot of the winter stuff reminded me of Brad from Black Ice Backlash. He's done it before. There was also so much that reminded me of Dark Vector, Ward's most recent book. It's just crazy. And again, it's just the perfect storm. The two were meant to be the two to work together on this particular project. They each had the history, the background, the knowledge, and now they have the friendship to really do something special. So yeah, setting 5 out of 5. You couldn't tell where Brad's writing ended and Ward's picked up, and where Ward's writing ended and Brad's picked up.
Yeah.
It just went together so well. Cover or the free space? What do you think?
Let's do free space.
Okay. I'm gonna let you take it.
Mine's got to be the polar bear.
Okay.
I just thought that it was this fun, quirky element thrown into it. Obviously, you know, this would be a very real threat in this area, and to, you know, not use it, we're not going all Revenant like on the story, but you know, it was used very sparingly to perfect purpose, and I don't know, I just really liked it.
Sure. And I liked its comeback.
Yeah.
I like how they loop back to it in the end. Of the action scenes we talked about, I'm gonna narrow it to my free space is the moment, and I think it was Sheridan brought up bombing the ice. My jaw hit the floor when that decision was made. I don't know why, but to get them out of that situation with that creative thinking, I just thought was so cool. So the moment she sent off that message, I lost it. I was like, that is going to be the sickest thing. And then to actually have it happen, it was the sickest thing. So what a culminating action piece, race to the finish line style that we tend to like in books a lot, is when there's this massive, massive race to the finish. It's got to have a battle. It's got to have a shoot 'em up, but it also has to have that kind of, I'm not going to call it a twist, but that really unlock, that creative unlock to a situation. And that was one par excellence. So
yeah. No,
great scene. The cover, it's solid, dude. It's fantastic.
Are you gonna go solid 5?
I think I will. I'm
pretty sure we talked about the cover a little bit. Maybe when we first like mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I love this cover. It's quintessential Brad. You know, you could slot this in to the Harvath universe, and it would fit right there. All right. I have one critique.
Oh, okay.
One critique, and honestly, it just came up when I was like, really, I wanted to consciously look at this cover, because I'm like, all right, is this cover a 5? Can you guess what my critique is?
So it just came to me. I think I might have it, but this could be off. I'm starting to think it has to do with the ice.
Why is there so much water?
Why is the ice fractured? Right. I thought it was small fissures. We're on a massive ice flow. It's going to look like solid land. But no, this is like, okay, but the plane's not down yet. So this isn't exactly where the plane landed.
Yeah, but it looks like the plane's crashing. And so obviously they're in this massive.
Yeah.
That's my one critique.
I didn't think about it that much, but it's fair.
And honestly, it didn't come to me until I like thoroughly looked at this cover. And if that was just
solid
like straight
ice,
like a solid ice.
Yeah. Because
that's the whole thing. They realize that, all right, we're going to land on ice, but we can't use the landing gear, because immediately all that weight's going to be on like 5 points and it's going to break. So
right.
And the only reason it does survive is because the back half of the plane goes into the ice, and the lighter portion of the plane stays up on the ice. If you were to down right here, the whole thing would just float.
It would just sink.
Would go down. Yeah.
And that's only part of it. To me, the other part is the escape and everything. When they're actually escaping, if this was what they had, they're dead. Like, you ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you actually see here's the thing. I was picturing something more like, I read Endurance, the Shackleton book, in the Antarctic, and it was like solid ice. Those dudes were initially just chilling. They were like killing seals, eating things. They're like, we'll be fine here. There's enough food. Like we're good. And they lasted weeks, maybe months on some ice floe. And I really got the sense of it. It's almost as if you're on land. It looks as solid, like as far as the eye can see. I would have wanted that feeling on the cover.
Yeah, because the other problem, right, is that the Cheyenne, the reason the
Can't break
Cheyenne
through.
had to go like they
Yeah.
were 30 miles away in the one case is because that was where the ice was thinnest. They could come up, and then so that's why they have to blow it up in order for them to come right next to them.
It can surface on this ice. This ice is
Oh
small
yeah,
beans.
it's a small beans.
Yeah, dude, that's tough because that
Unless
hurts.
in the distance, all right. If you zoom in a little bit, you can see in the distance more like
left. Yeah,
more like solid. Like all right,
yeah.
Maybe I'm just being too harsh.
No, we're splitting hairs. The other thing is for me, the plane did not crash yet, so it looks very close to the ground, but you could still be hundreds of feet away.
Right.
I mean,
you're right.
And
you're
Ward
right.
would know where this plane is now with its elevation to where it crashes could be a whole nother landscape. So
yeah, you're right. You're right.
But nothing in the book talked about open ocean as much as this. So that's the flip side. Too much water.
Right, I'm gonna ding it for 4 point. No, not 4 points. I'm gonna ding it a half a point. 4.5.
To make up for you being a little prissy bitch over there, I'll give you a 5.
All right. Sounds good. All right, let's see.
I think we got to be right in the 45 territory. This book strikes me as a 45 through and through, which is a great benchmark to hit on the Thriller Pod scorecard. Our boy Mark gave it a 46. I thought right about there, that's where it's going to be.
All right, I'm at a 44. And that should mean you're
40
at a
45
45
even.
and 45 and a half.
45 and a half. Okay.
Yeah.
I was generous in some areas. I took away in others. So it's a 45 kind of book. I really think so. Will it hold up for Book of the Year? It's so early. It's too early. But it really made a strong push here in the first couple of months of the year.
Yeah, I think, and maybe that's clouding my. Obviously, that you can make it can make up more points on action, suspense, and plot. Like normally our books of the year are 9s and 10s. There,
that's true.
Maybe because it's February, I don't want to go that high. Maybe we'll revisit it at the very end. But at least coming out the gate in February, this is an awesome book. Everybody needs to go give someone else a copy of it. Like let's push this as much as we can because it's really good.
Yeah, you're right. When we can give a 10 and a 10 to plot and action, no questions asked, it's like as clear as can be. A 10 on those two, we're aiming high. And this one I think is just short of that.
Still very high. 45.
45 on the scorecard's phenomenal. Yeah, we haven't done that too often.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, folks, you already got a limerick on our interview with Brad and Ward, so scroll up in the feed a couple episodes if you want to hear that limerick. And Chris, I don't know what's next, but this is going to be a hard one to follow up.
It is. I think we were toying around doing the next in the Gray Man series.
Book 3.
Might be doing something special. Don't want to divulge it yet, but something special for you guys coming up. So yeah, but if you need something to read in the meantime, check out the third book in the Gray Man series.
Yeah, I'll be glad to get back to Gray Man.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, I need to thank our patrons, including our deputy directors, Sherry F. and Brad E., our special agents, Adam, Mike, Ben, Daryl, George, Matt, Don, and Chris. Please subscribe to all 3 seasons of No Limits. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at thrillerpodcast. And as always, just like Casey, be Casey.